The Treaty Bride, the observation deck of the Krenathi diplomatic vessel, offered a view that should have been beautiful. Stars stretched endlessly across the void. Distant nebulae painted colors that only Krenathi eyes could fully appreciate. And somewhere in that vastness lay home. Ambassador Lyria Venn stood before the reinforced crystal viewing port, her four-fingered hands clasped behind her back in the formal posture her tutors had drilled into her since childhood. Her skin, naturally pale blue with darker markings along her temples and neck, seemed to glow faintly in the starlight. She wore the ceremonial robes of her position, deep violet trimmed with silver thread that caught and reflected light with every breath, but none of it felt real. 5 years. The war between the Krenathi Empire and the Human Federation had raged for 5 brutal years across a dozen star systems. Lyria had studied the casualty reports until the numbers blurred together. 3 billion dead on both sides. Entire colonies reduced to radioactive ash, fleet battles that left debris fields stretching millions of kilometers. She had walked through the refugee camps on her homeworld of Krenathos Prime, seen children with haunted eyes and adults who flinched at sudden sounds. War had a smell, she discovered. Desperation mixed with grief, mixed with the acrid burn of weapons fire that never quite left the survivors' clothes. The peace talks had dragged on for 8 months. Each side demanded concessions the other would not grant. Pride and pain made compromise impossible. Then someone, she never learned who, suggested the old solution. A marriage. A union between the species that would symbolize commitment to peace and give both sides something to protect. Volunteers were requested from both militaries and diplomatic corps. When Lyria stepped forward, the council chamber had gone silent. She was not just any ambassador. She was third niece to the Empress herself, educated at the finest institutions, fluent in 7 languages, including the harsh, clipped tones of human English. Her volunteer carried weight. "You understand what you're offering?" High Chancellor Vex had asked, his aged voice carrying centuries of political maneuvering. "This will not be temporary. Human marriage customs are binding. You would be tied to this human for life." "I understand," Lyria replied, her voice steady despite the racing of her dual hearts. "If my life can buy peace, then it's a price worth paying." Now 3 weeks later, she stood on this ship awaiting her first meeting with the human who would become her husband. Lieutenant Marcus Reed. She knew facts about him.
Age 32 standard years.
Decorated soldier with multiple commendations for valor. Parents deceased, no siblings, no previous marriages. He had also volunteered, apparently surprising his superiors who had expected volunteers from the diplomatic corps. Not active military. Beyond the bare facts, he was a mystery. Humans were still mysterious to her people. Before the war, contact had been minimal. The Krenathi Empire, ancient and proud, had largely ignored the young upstart species. That arrogance had cost them dearly. The door behind her whispered open. Lyria turned, her robes swirling around her tall, slender frame. 3 figures entered. High Chancellor Vex, Ambassador Torin, who had negotiated the treaty, and between them a human. Lyria's first thought was that he was shorter than expected. Humans generally were compared to Krenathi, but somehow she had imagined this one differently. Marcus Reed stood perhaps a head shorter than her, though his frame was broader, more compact. He wore a formal human military dress uniform, dark blue with gold buttons and various colored ribbons on his chest that signified things she did not yet understand. His hair was brown, cut very short, and his skin was a medium tan shade that her studies told her indicated mixed ancestry. But it was his eyes that caught her. Brown, almost amber in the light and utterly unreadable. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of discipline. Each step was measured, balanced. When he stopped before her, he executed a bow that somehow blended human military precision with an attempt at Krenathi courtly manners. Someone had trained him at least a little. "Ambassador Venn," he said in carefully pronounced Krenathi. His accent was atrocious, but the effort meant something. "It is an honor to meet you," Lyria responded in English, knowing her accent was equally poor. "Lieutenant Reed, the honor is mine. Please." He switched to English, relief evident in his expression. "Call me Marcus. If we're doing this, we should probably skip the formalities. Then you must call me Lyria." She studied him, trying to see past the uniform to the person beneath. "Your Krenathi is very brave." Marcus smiled, and it transformed his face from stern to almost boyish. That's diplomat speak for terrible, isn't it? Despite herself, Lyria felt her facial markings darken slightly, the Krenathi equivalent of a blush. Perhaps a little terrible. I'll stick to English then. I'm told you're fluent. I studied at the Xenolinguistics Institute for 6 years. English is actually one of the easier human languages. Your species has a startling number of them. Yeah, we can't agree on anything, including how to talk. Marcus's smile faded slightly. Listen, I know this is strange. Arranged marriages aren't really a thing in human culture anymore, outside of some traditional communities. And marrying an alien is, well, it's new territory for everyone. Lyria appreciated his directness. Krenathi culture valued elaborate courtesy, but right now, honesty felt more important. For my people, arranged marriages are still common among the nobility. But yes, this is unprecedented. I have never met a human before today, really? I figured ambassadors would have met lots of species. I specialized in the Vryn Collective and the Thaxian Concordat. Humans were not considered significant enough for dedicated study until recently. She regretted the words as soon as she spoke them. I apologize. That sounded condescending. It's accurate, though. Marcus's expression remained neutral. We've only been in space for 200 years. Your empire has existed for 20,000. From your perspective, we're children. Children who nearly defeated us, Lyria said quietly. The empire underestimated humanity. We paid for that arrogance with millions of lives. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or memory. Both sides paid. War doesn't care about who was arrogant or who was right. It just takes and takes until someone finds the courage to stop. They stood in silence for a moment. Two beings from different worlds bound together by the hope that their union might mean something, might be worth something. Finally, High Chancellor Vex cleared his throat. The ceremony will take place in 4 hours, he said. Both human and Krenathi traditions will be honored. Afterward, you will be taken to Concordia Station, where you will reside as symbols of the peace. Your duties will include attending diplomatic functions, mediating disputes, and serving as living proof that our species can coexist. He looked between them. The weight of billions rests on this union. Do not take it lightly. We won't, Marcus said simply. After the officials left, giving them time alone before the ceremony, Lyria and Marcus returned to looking at the stars. She noticed he positioned himself slightly to her left, where he could see both her and the door. Old habits, she thought. Soldiers were always aware of exits and threats. Are you afraid? She asked. Marcus considered the question. Of marriage? Of tying my life to someone I just met? Of representing my entire species? Yeah, I'm terrified. He glanced at her. You? Equally terrified, Lyria admitted. But also hopeful. Is that foolish? No, Marcus said. Hope is what got us here. Might as well hold on to it. The ceremony took place in the ship's grand atrium, a space designed for important occasions. Flowers from both worlds filled the air with competing fragrances. Representatives from both governments watched from tiered seating. Lyria wore traditional Krenathi marriage robes, pure white with intricate silver embroidery that traced her family lineage. Marcus wore his dress uniform, but someone had added a Krenathi ceremonial sash across his chest. The officiant, a neutral party from the Vryn Collective, spoke words in 3 languages about unity and commitment. Lyria barely heard them. She was acutely aware of Marcus standing beside her, of his steady breathing, of the warmth radiating from his body. Humans ran hot compared to Krenathi. She had read that in a xenobiology text, but experiencing it was different. When it came time for vows, Marcus spoke first. His voice carried clearly through the atrium. I, Marcus Reed, take you, Lyria Ven, as my wife. I promise to honor you, to respect you, to stand beside you in whatever comes. I promise to work for peace, to be worthy of the trust placed in us, and to face each day with courage. This I swear. Lyria's turn. Her voice trembled slightly at the start, but grew stronger. I, Lyria Ven, take you, Marcus Reed, as my husband. I promise to honor you, to learn from you, to walk this path together. I promise to be a bridge between our peoples, to never forget what this union represents, and to face each day with hope. This I swear. The officiant pronounced them bonded according to both human and Krenathi law. In human tradition, they should kiss. In Krenathi tradition, they should press their foreheads together. Marcus looked at her questioningly. Lyria made the decision, stepping forward and pressing her forehead against his. His skin was warm, almost hot. He held very still, as if afraid to break her. Then he lifted one hand and gently placed it on her shoulder, the barest touch. And somehow that small gesture meant everything. The reception was a blur of faces and forced pleasantries. Crinathi nobles who looked at Marcus with barely concealed disdain. Human diplomats who studied Lyria like a curiosity. Everyone smiled and said the right words, but tension hummed beneath every interaction. Peace was still so fragile. An older Crinathi general, Vex Korath, approached them. He had lost his entire family when humans had bombed the colony world of Sanctuary 7. His face was a mask of controlled hatred. "So this is the human who will pollute royal bloodlines," he said in Crinathi, knowing Marcus would not understand. General Korath, Lyria responded coolly, also in Crinathi. "Your presence honors us, does it? I wonder if your ancestors feel honored, knowing you spread your legs for the animals who murdered your cousins." Marcus might not speak Crinathi, but he clearly recognized the tone. He stepped slightly forward, not aggressive but present. "General," he said in English, his voice even, "I can't understand your words, but I recognize anger when I hear it. You have every right to that anger. I can't give you back what was taken. All I can do is work to make sure no one else loses what you lost." Someone must have translated because Korath's eyes narrowed. "Pretty words from a soldier. How many Crinathi did you kill, Lieutenant? How much blood is on your hands?" Marcus did not flinch. "Enough that I'll carry it the rest of my life. War makes us all into things we never wanted to be. I can't undo what I did. I can only try to be better." Korath stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. Lyria released a breath she had not known she was holding. "That was very diplomatic," she said. "I meant every word," Marcus replied. "I did things in the war that I'm not proud of. Things that still wake me up at night. But I'm here because I want the nightmares to stop. For everyone." Hours later, a shuttle took them to Concordia Station, a massive neutral facility built specifically to house the various diplomats and mediators working on implementing the peace. Their assigned quarters were in the residential section, a suite designed to blend both Crinathi and human aesthetics. High ceilings for Crinathi comfort, heavier gravity for human strength, colors and lighting adjustable for either species' vision. Marcus set down his single bag and looked around. Lyria had an entire trunk of belongings that would arrive later, but he traveled light. He turned to face her, and for the first time since meeting, they were truly alone. No officials, no watchers, no expectations except their own. "I want to establish something right away," Marcus said. "This marriage is real legally, but in private you set the boundaries. I won't presume anything. If you want separate rooms, we arrange it. If you want distance, I'll give it. You're not obligated to anything you're not comfortable with." Lyria studied this human who had just given her power in a situation where she had expected to have none. "You surprise me, Marcus Reed." "How so?" "I expected demands. Or at least expectations. Instead, you offer me choice." "I'm a soldier," Marcus said. "I follow orders and I complete missions. But my mother taught me that consent matters in everything, especially marriage. We might be doing this for politics, but that doesn't mean we can't be decent to each other." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She died 6 years ago. Cancer." He said it matter-of-factly, but Lyria heard the grief beneath. "Dad followed a year later." "Broken heart," the doctor said. "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Marcus moved to the window, looking out at the stars. "What about your family? I know you're related to the Empress, but beyond that..." "My mother is the Empress's younger sister. I have 2 siblings, both older. They are politicians and military leaders, much more important than me. I was always the scholar, the one who preferred libraries to council chambers." Lyria joined him at the window. "But here I am, playing the most important political role of my life." Funny how life works out. They stood together in silence, watching ships come and go from the station. Despite everything, despite the strangeness and fear and weight of responsibility, Lyria felt something unexpected. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. "I'll take the room on the left," Marcus said finally. "You should have the larger bedroom." "And Lyria?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving this a chance. For believing peace is possible. For being brave enough to marry a stranger." He smiled slightly. "Even if that stranger is from a species of animals, as your general so kindly put it. You understood that?" "I've picked up a few Crinathi words. Enough to know an insult when I hear one." Lyria felt her markings darken again. "I apologize for his rudeness." "Don't. He lost everything. He's earned the right to hate me. Marcus picked up his bag. Good night, Lyria. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to make this marriage and this peace work. Good night, Marcus. He went to his room, closing the door quietly behind him. Lyria stood alone in the main living area, looking around at this space that was now her home. Everything had changed so fast. Yesterday she had been Ambassador Ven, negotiator and scholar. Today she was someone's wife. Tomorrow she would wake up and begin the work of proving that ancient enemies could become partners. She thought about Marcus, about the way he moved and spoke, about the pain she had seen in his eyes when he talked about war. He was not what she expected. Humans in general were not what she expected. The propaganda during the war had painted them as violent savages, but Marcus was thoughtful, controlled and kind. Still, she had seen his military file. Those medals on his chest were not for paperwork. He had fought, killed, survived battles that destroyed entire fleets. There was a warrior inside that gentle exterior, and Lyria wondered if she would ever see it. Part of her hoped she never would. But another part, the part that had studied humanity's combat doctrine and their frightening effectiveness in war, was curious. What would it take to make a man like Marcus Reed become the soldier again? She pushed the thought away. They were at peace now. That soldier was not needed anymore. Instead, she went to her room and began unpacking, trying to make this strange new life feel like home. In his room, Marcus lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. His mind was full of contradictions. Relief that the war was over. Guilt for the things he had done. Hope that this marriage might actually mean something. Fear that he would fail, that the peace would shatter, that Lyria would eventually see him for what he really was. The medals on his chest felt heavy. He had not told her the whole truth. Yes, he had fought in the war. But his file was classified beyond what civilians could access. She did not know about Talos 7. She did not know about the missions deep in Crinathi space. She did not know why his fellow soldiers had called him Reaper. Maybe she never would. Maybe he could be just Marcus, the man who made terrible coffee and tried to speak Crinathi and wanted to build something good from the ruins of war. Maybe the soldier could stay buried, he hoped so. Because if that side of him ever emerged again, if Lyria ever saw what he could really do, she would understand why humans had been so feared. And that fear was not something you built peace on. Tomorrow would be a new day. Tomorrow they would start learning to be partners. Tonight Marcus let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, the nightmares would finally end. When shadows return. 3 months on Concordia Station had taught Lyria many things about humans in general, and Marcus Reed in particular. She learned that humans drank an alarming amount of a bitter liquid called coffee that they claimed was essential for consciousness. She learned that human music was chaotic but somehow beautiful, full of emotion that transcended language. She learned that Marcus could not cook without setting off smoke alarms, that he read voraciously, and that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. Most importantly, she learned that the awkwardness of those first days had given way to something else. Not love, not yet, but genuine friendship. They talked over breakfast, worked together on diplomatic matters during the day, and spent evenings sharing their respective cultures. Marcus taught her about Earth's history, about a species that had spent most of its existence fighting itself before finally reaching for the stars. Lyria taught him about the Crinathi Empire's long rise, the golden age of art and science, the complex web of politics that governed her people. They were sitting in their quarters, reviewing proposals for trade agreements when Marcus suddenly laughed. Lyria looked up from her datapad. What's funny? This proposal wants to establish agricultural exchanges. Humans teaching Crinathi farming techniques. Marcus shook his head. Your people had mastered hydroponics before my ancestors figured out how to use stone tools. The arrogance is remarkable. Actually, Lyria said thoughtfully, human agriculture is fascinating. You developed it independently on a death world with wildly varying conditions. Some of your techniques could be useful for harsh colony environments. You're just being diplomatic. I'm being scientific. Earth crops are resilient. They have to be. Your entire planet is trying to kill you. Fair point. Marcus set down his datapad and stretched. Want to get dinner at the observation deck restaurant? I heard they're serving that Crinathi crystal fruit you like. I would enjoy that. It was these small moments that Lyria treasured. The casual invitation, the fact that Marcus remembered her preferences, the ease with which they navigated each other's presence. They were friends, she realized. Real friends. The marriage might have started as politics, but something genuine was growing. The observation deck restaurant was crowded. Concordia Station now housed thousands of people from dozens of species, all working on various aspects of implementing the peace. Diplomats, traders, scientists, military liaisons. The end of the war had created an explosion of cooperation, or at least the attempt at cooperation. Some wounds ran too deep for simple treaties to heal. They were halfway through their meal when the first explosion hit. The station shuddered. Alarm shrieked. Through the massive viewing ports, Lyria saw a fireball bloom on the outer ring. Then another. And another. People screamed. Some ran for exits. Others froze in panic. Marcus moved. One moment he was sitting across from her. The next he was beside her, pulling her down below the table level. His entire demeanor changed. The relaxed friendliness vanished, replaced by something cold and focused. "Stay low," he said, his voice clipped and commanding. "Don't move unless I tell you." "What's happening?" "Attack, multiple explosions. Likely bombers inside the station." His eyes were scanning the room, cataloging exits and threats with frightening speed. This was planned. Another explosion, closer this time. The deck tilted slightly as the station's stabilizers compensated. Through the chaos, Lyria heard weapons fire. Not the clean energy weapons of the Federation or Empire, but something older, more brutal. Projectile weapons. A group of armed figures burst through the main entrance. They wore mismatched armor and carried an assortment of weapons. On their chests all bore the same symbol painted in red. A broken chain. Lyria recognized it from intelligence briefings. The Remnant. A terrorist faction made up of extremists from both species who opposed the peace. They wanted the war to continue. "Everyone down," the leader shouted in accented English. "Anyone moves, anyone tries to be a hero, you die." People complied, dropping to the floor. Lyria heard sobbing, prayers in various languages. Marcus had gone absolutely still beside her. She glanced at him and felt something cold crawl down her spine. His eyes had changed. They were flat, emotionless, calculating. This was not her husband. This was someone else. "Marcus?" she whispered. 12 hostiles, he said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. "Mixed species. Projectile and energy weapons. 4 watching the crowd, 3 securing exits, 2 on the command deck, 3 roaming. Poor positioning. They're amateurs. How can you... I'm counting their breaths, their movements, their attention spans. They're coordinated but undisciplined. Probably ideologues, not professional soldiers." His hand moved slowly, reaching into his jacket. He produced a small device no bigger than his thumb. "Emergency beacon. Security will respond in 8 to 10 minutes. That's too long." "Yes." Marcus was still for another moment, then he seemed to make a decision. "Lyria, I need you to trust me. When I move, you run for that service corridor behind the bar. Don't look back. Get to a secure room and lock yourself in. I'm not leaving you. You have to." He looked at her then, and his eyes were his own again for just a moment. "Please, I can't do what I need to do if I'm worried about you." Before she could respond, one of the terrorists started pulling people up, checking faces. They were looking for someone specific. When he reached a Krenathi diplomat Lyria recognized from the Trade Council, he pulled out a scanner and nodded to his companions. "This one," he said. "The Empire's representative." They dragged the diplomat forward. The man was elderly, his markings faded with age. He did not resist. The leader of the group raised his weapon. "This is what peace gets you," he announced. "Weakness, betrayal. We're going to show you what happens to traitors." Marcus moved. Lyria had seen recordings of human combat. She had studied their military tactics in academic settings. But nothing prepared her for the reality. Marcus was not fast in the way Krenathi warriors were fast. He was something else entirely. Efficient, inevitable, terrifying. He crossed the distance to the nearest terrorist in 3 steps. His hand caught the man's weapon arm, twisted. The angle was wrong, physically impossible. Bone snapped with a sound like breaking wood. Marcus stripped the weapon away and used it in one fluid motion. 3 shots. 3 terrorists dropped, each with a single precise hit. The room erupted into chaos. Terrorists turned, tried to acquire targets. Marcus was already moving. He flowed through the space like water, like something that could not be pinned down or stopped. A weapon came up. He was under it, inside the terrorist's guard. An elbow strike to the throat. The terrorist went down choking. Another came at him with a vibro blade. Marcus caught the weapon arm, redirected the thrust into the terrorist's own ally, then swept both legs and dropped the attacker into the floor hard enough that Lyria heard the impact across the room. The blade came free. Marcus threw it. It buried itself in another terrorist's shoulder, disabling his shooting arm. 7 down in less than 30 seconds. The remaining 5 fell back, trying to regroup. The leader was screaming orders, bringing his weapon to bear on the crowd. Marcus grabbed a fallen energy rifle, brought it up and fired 5 times in rapid succession. Each shot found its mark. Each terrorist fell. Silence, broken only by groaning and the station's alarms. Marcus stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the fallen. He was breathing normally, as if he had just taken a walk. His uniform was not even rumpled, but his eyes were still flat, still empty. Then he blinked and the soldier retreated. Marcus looked around at what he had done, and Lyria saw horror flash across his face. Just for a moment, then his training reasserted control. He set down the weapon carefully and activated his emergency beacon. "This is Lieutenant Marcus Reed. Terrorist attack neutralized. Observation deck restaurant. Multiple wounded, need medical teams and security immediately." His voice was level, professional. Only Lyria could see his hands shaking slightly. People were standing up, shocked and traumatized but alive. Some looked at Marcus with awe, others with fear. The elderly diplomat he had saved approached slowly. You're one of them," the old Krinathi said in his native language. "The human death dealers. We heard stories. We thought they were exaggerations." Marcus did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. He nodded once, then turned and walked toward Lyria. She stood, her legs unsteady. He had told her to run. She had not moved. Could not move. Had been frozen by the sheer violence of what she witnessed. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked, his voice gentle again. "No, How did you—" "Not here. Later." Security forces were pouring in now, Federation Marines and Krinathi Guard together. They saw Marcus standing among the unconscious terrorists, and their confusion was evident. One Marine, a woman with sergeant's stripes, approached carefully. "Lieutenant? Sir, are you responsible for this?" "Yes, Sergeant. All 12 hostiles." "By yourself?" "Yes." The sergeant looked around at the scene, at the precise, efficient violence written in fallen bodies and disabled weapons. "Christ, they told me you'd gone soft, playing diplomat and husband." She almost smiled. "Guess you've still got it. Get these people medical attention, Sergeant. Prioritize the elderly and children." "Yes, sir." The next hours were a blur of debriefings and medical checks. 4 more bomb sites had been discovered. 2 other attacks had occurred simultaneously in different parts of the station. 17 dead, hundreds wounded. It could have been so much worse. Marcus's emergency beacon had alerted security sooner than the terrorists expected, allowing response teams to contain the attacks. Lyria sat through interrogations in a daze, answering questions about what she saw. Yes, her husband had engaged the terrorists. Yes, he had neutralized all of them. No, she did not believe he had used excessive force, but inside her mind churned. The Marcus she knew was kind, thoughtful, gentle. The thing she had seen in that restaurant was something else entirely, something lethal. They returned to their quarters after midnight. Marcus made tea, his hands steady now, his movements careful. He placed a cup in front of her and sat across the small table. For a long time, neither spoke. "You want to know?" Marcus finally said. It was not a question. "I need to know." Marcus wrapped his hands around his own cup, staring into the liquid. "My file is classified. The version you saw when we were matched is sanitized. The real version is locked behind security clearances reserved for fleet admirals and intelligence chiefs." "Tell me," Lyria said softly. "I joined the military at 18. I was good at it. Really good. Scored top marks in every category. They recruited me for special operations. By 22, I was running missions deep in enemy territory." He paused. "Krinathi territory. Sabotage, assassination, intelligence gathering. Things that never got reported in the public casualty counts." Lyria felt her heart sink. "How many?" "How many what? Missions? Kills?" Marcus's voice was hollow. "I stopped counting after Talus 7. I know that name. It was a massacre. 3,000 Krinathi soldiers died when their base was destroyed. We thought it was a fleet bombardment. It was 4 people. Me and 3 teammates. We infiltrated, planted charges on the reactor cores, and were extraction before anyone knew we were there." Marcus looked up at her, and she saw the weight of it in his eyes. I was 24. My commander called it a brilliant operation. My teammates called me Reaper after that. The name stuck. You were following orders, and does that matter? I looked through scopes at people who never knew I was there. I placed charges that vaporized entire installations. I became very good at killing Lyria, frighteningly good. By the time the war ended, I'd been involved in operations that killed thousands. He set down his cup. That's who you married. Not a gentle diplomat. A killer who's very good at pretending to be human. Lyria absorbed this. Part of her wanted to recoil, to see him as the monster the propaganda had painted. But she thought about what she had seen today. You saved everyone in that restaurant. I killed 12 people. You stopped 12 people who were about to kill innocents. You disabled them when you could have simply executed them, and you hated every second of it. I saw your face after, Marcus. You were horrified by what you had to do. Doesn't change what I am. No, Lyria agreed, but it shows what you choose to be. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. His skin was warm, alive. During the war, I analyzed intelligence reports. I studied human combat doctrine. I know what your people are capable of. Your special forces became legends on our side, ghosts that struck from nowhere and vanished. We feared you more than your fleets. That doesn't bother you? It terrifies me, Lyria admitted. What I saw today terrifies me. But Marcus, do you know what I also saw? I saw you count the terrorists first. Assess the threat. Make sure I was safe before you acted. And when it was over, when you could have let them bleed out, you called for medical help immediately. You didn't enjoy it. You did what was necessary and hated yourself for it. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself. Perhaps I am, Lyria said, but I'm also seeing clearly for the first time. You're not a monster, Marcus. You're a soldier who did terrible things because your people asked you to, and when they asked you to be something else, to be a symbol of peace, you said yes. How many people can say they've been both a god of war and a builder of peace? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I was afraid of this, of you seeing what I really am and leaving. I cannot leave. We're married, remember? Lyria tried to smile. Though I admit, it would have been nice to know about the legendary combat skills before tonight. Would it have changed your decision? To volunteer? Lyria thought about it honestly. I don't know, maybe, but I'm glad I didn't know. I got to meet Marcus the man first. The person who makes bad coffee and worse attempts at speaking Krinathi, who reads poetry and gets embarrassed when I catch him humming human music. That person is real too, is he enough? Can you live with both sides? Can you? Marcus smiled slightly. Touché. I don't know, Lyria, I'm trying, but days like today show me that I can't escape what I was. When danger comes, that training kicks in automatically. I become that thing again. Good, Lyria said firmly. Today, that thing saved hundreds of lives, including mine. I don't need you to be harmless, Marcus. I need you to be honest.
Can you do that?
I can try. Then we'll figure this out together. Because whatever else is true, we're partners. And partners face things together. They sat together in the quiet of their quarters, hands still touching across the table. Outside, security forces hunted the remaining remnant cells. Repairs were underway. The fragile piece had been tested and held. Barely, but it held. Lyria looked at Marcus and saw both versions now. The kind, awkward man who tried so hard to be gentle, and the lethal, efficient warrior who could end lives with frightening ease. Both were real. Both were her husband. The question was whether she could love both. She did not have an answer yet, but she was willing to try. And in a universe still healing from war, that willingness might be enough. Marcus spoke quietly. Thank you. For what? For not running. For giving me a chance. For being braver than I deserved. You saved my life today. You saved mine 3 months ago, Marcus replied. When you married me. When you gave me a reason to be something other than a weapon. I don't know if I can ever fully leave that behind, but you make me want to try. Lyria squeezed his hand. Then try. And I'll be here, helping you remember that you're more than what you were made to be. They finished their tea in comfortable silence. Two beings from different worlds learning that love might be built on understanding even the darkest parts of each other. The road ahead would not be easy. But tonight they had taken a step forward together. And sometimes that was enough. Comment for next part.